Dear friends and followers, welcome to my channel, and I'm very excited to introduce you the first episode of my new project IFR Classroom. On this episode, I will talk about the standard instrument departures, or also known as SIDs. I will explain to you the procedures, the purposes, and details of SIDs. We will then, after the theoretical part, jump into the cockpit and we will fly a complete SID together from the beginning, let's say the preparation, to the end of the SID. So sit back and let's get started. So let's assume that you are planning to conduct the flight from A to B under IFR rules. IFR stands for Instrument Flight Rules. You have on the one hand the IFR and on the other hand the VFR. VFR stands for Visual Flight Rules. At VFR, you more or less can fly wherever you want, make turns wherever you want, fly as high as you want, and so on. At IFR, you have to follow some rules, because when you are flying IFR, your flight is controlled by ATC. So you're following rules. One of these rules, or let's say procedure, is the standard instrument departure, or as I said, SID. What we'll do first, we will sit on our aircraft and we will listen to the ATIS, the latest MET report, for this specific airport, let's say. After this, we get our clearance for our flight. When we get our clearance, we will get also our departure route assigned from ATC. You will find this route in your navigational charts. So what is a SID? The SID is a predefined flight route that helps aircraft transition from the airport to the en route phase of flight safely and efficiently. SIDs are designed to manage air traffic and ensure separation between departing and arriving aircrafts. So for a better understanding, it's a map which shows you directions, altitudes, frequencies, and all of this you have to follow strictly under the supervision of air traffic control. The primary purpose of SIDs is to streamline departure procedures, reduce pilot and controller workload, and enhance safety. SIDs provide a standardized method for departing aircraft to navigate to a specific waypoint or airspace. Also very important are the noise abatement procedures. We have procedure 1 and procedure 2. One of the differences between those two are that in procedure 1 the airport is in or in the vicinity of a city, and on procedure 2 the airport is quite further away from the city. The other difference between those two is how we fly the specific procedure. On procedure 1, we will take off and we will climb to an altitude of 800 feet above ground. Then we will reduce our power from takeoff thrust to climb power. When we climb further to 1,500 or maximum 3,000 feet above ground, then we will retract the flaps on schedule and accelerate the aircraft. On procedure 2, after takeoff and an altitude of 800 feet above ground, we will do first the acceleration. So we will retract the flaps and we will accelerate until reaching, let's say, 3,000 feet above ground, where we reduce our thrust from takeoff thrust to climb thrust. So as you see, when we are using procedure 1, we reduce noise around and over the airport by prioritizing gaining height. And when we are using procedure 2, we reduce noise over areas more distant from the airport by prioritizing increasing forward speed. Let's talk now about the components of a SID. A SID typically includes specific waypoints, altitudes, headings, and speed restrictions. These components ensure that the aircraft follow a precise path, avoiding obstacles and conflicts with other traffic. Also important to mention is the minimum sector altitude, or also known as MSA. The MSA is the lowest altitude which may be used, which will provide a minimum clearance of 1000 feet above all objects located in the area contained within a sector of a circle of 25 nautical mile radius. This radius has its center usually around a navigational aid, for example an NDB or VOR. For our example here is on East Midlands the NDB Echo Mike Echo in use. And we can see that when we fly a heading from heading north to heading west, we have to be above 2500 feet. From heading west to heading north, we have to fly an altitude of 2700 feet. The last part now is how we brief a SID. It's very important to brief the departure we have to fly. Either we're flying alone or in a multi-crew environment. So what are the steps and what are the parts of a briefing? First of all, it's my opinion, it's for me the best how it works for me. I start with the template. I cross-check with my partner, or if you are alone, you see the efficient date of the chart, if it's up to date. So we start with the top of the chart and it says it's the page 10-3 Delta and the efficient date. Then we continue with the name of our departure. On our case here, it's the trend to November departure, or TNT Tango November Tango to November. And we can see we have also a speed restriction that we have to maintain 250 knots below flight level 100. The third point looking at the chart is the MSA, as mentioned before. The fourth part is now the routing of our departure. It's very important to read it out loud, because then your partner can verify the departure and also for you to check it with the picture above the routing. And in our case, we have to climb straight ahead to 1 nautical mile from India Echo Mike Echo, which is also the localizer DME of East Midlands. Then we have to turn right on a track 2908, and when we cross 12 nautical miles of TNT, the VOR station, we have to be above 3000 feet, but not above 6000. Then we have to turn right to intercept the TNT radial 160 inbound, and then when we are crossing 7 nautical miles, we have to be above 5000 feet, below 6000. Finally, when we are on 4 nautical miles, we have to be exactly on 6000 feet, and then direct to trend VOR, where our departure ends. After the trend VOR, we make the transition to the en route phase. I think it's enough now with the theory, and let's jump into the aircraft to see how we fly in practice the SID in an aircraft, with the preparation, the briefing, and the execution. We are now in the cockpit and we will do our preparation for departure from East Midlands runway 27. We are actually now on the runway 27, and for training purposes we will do the preparations here on the runway. Usually we are at the terminal for this kind of aircraft. Let me show you. It's the Diamond 42. We will be at the general aviation terminal. Yes, this aircraft is a very, very nice aircraft, especially for your flight training when you do your multi-piston rating. It's very comfortable. it has a FedEx system for the thrust levers, so you just give one input for the left thrust lever and the right one, and the computer gives then the RPM, the fuel flow, and so on. Usually if you make your flight training at the flight school for the multi-piston rating on a, let's say, Piper Seneca, you have manually to regulate the manifold pressure, fuel flow, or prop settings, and so on and so on. In this aircraft we just have the thrust levers, and we will control our thrust and percentage of load. You can see here we are now on idle and it's 6% of load. Yeah, what are the steps now? We are in the cockpit, we've done our walk around and so on, we checked everything, and now we sit in the cockpit and we are more or less ready to go. What is the first step? We have to hear the artists. We have to hear the latest MET report. What is the actual artist? It's defined by letters: Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, etc., etc. Let's say it's information Charlie, and they give and at the ATIS you can hear the actual QNH from this airport. We have now standard atmosphere, so 1013 is the actual QNH for East Midlands. They give you also wind, but we have now calm weather, no wind for this type of flight, so wind calculations is not needed for this time. Maybe one lesson after this I will do another video with calculations and so on. But now, first step, ATIS, the current weather, QNH 1013. Second step, we will call our ground frequency or deliver frequency, but usually it's ground for this airports. And where we can find it, of course, at the charts. Now we have here the Navigraph charts. I've already selected here the SID, but let's go to show you the frequencies. Here, let's go here on airport, height, on this side. We have the ATIS frequency 122.680, East Midlands ground 121.9005, and the tower 124.005. And as I said, what we will do, COM frequencies now, because we want to contact the ground. So this is COM1 and this is COM2. In COM1 we will select the frequency which we want to call. In our case, the ground frequency. It's 121.905. So 121.905. It's on standby because it's squared here. Now it's on active, and we got also here the indication Echo Golf Lima X-ray, it's East Midlands ground. At standby, what we've learned is to have on standby the first frequency when you are in the air. So back again, SID, it's a trend to November departure, and the first frequency on air is Scottish Control radar 134.430. So 134.430. Come on. .430. It's on standby and we leave it there. We are on ground frequency. Then we have COM2. What we are doing with COM2? On COM2 we have on standby, let's say now, I forgot it before because we had to get our ATIS. How we get the ATIS? Of course, by putting in some frequencies, as we saw here on the airport frequencies. Height and ATIS 122.680. 122. 680. Let's do it on active. Okay. We have COM1 mic here on active, COM1 listening active, and COM2 listening active. These are very important because you are transmitting via COM1 now. So your mic is connected to COM1. This is indicating. And you're listening also to COM1, but also to COM2 to hear the ATIS. Yeah. And what will we have on the standby frequency? We put always the frequency 121.5, because this is the universal frequency for emergencies. If an aircraft, let's say, is in an emergency and lost maybe also the communication with the radar, or let's say it hasn't any contact with any radio station or something else, this aircraft, which will be in an emergency, will trying to transmit, to give a message on the COM2 frequency 121.5. So that's why we have always also COM2 listening engaged, and the COM2 frequency for emergency also engaged on active, always. The only time when you're switching the emergency frequency to standby is when you want to listen to the ATIS. Listen to the ATIS, switch, listening, I've got my information, alright, wrote it down, and again. Yes, this is very important. So we are now on ground frequency 121.905, 121.905, and now we will contact ground. What will we say to the ground station? That we are aircraft, let's say Diamond 42, Golf Charlie Oscar Whiskey Sierra, request clearance for destination aerodrome, and information Charlie is received. Information Charlie, as we said, is the ATIS which is now current. The ATIS is changing every 30 minutes. Every half an hour we get a new weather report, MET report, and it's defined by letters. So we have now information Charlie, and we say it to the ground station. Information Charlie is received. Yeah. The first contact is what it's called, East Midlands. East Midlands ground, good evening. This is Golf Charlie Oscar Whiskey Sierra. There we call back and we say, Golf Charlie Oscar Whiskey Sierra, hello, East Midlands ground. Then we will say, request clearance to destination aerodrome, information Charlie is received. And then they will respond with the message, which will be, let's say, cleared to destination aerodrome via Trent November 2 November departure, climb initially 5,000 feet, and yes, of course, squawk code, and the squawk code is 1000. Then we have to read it back. So clear to destination aerodrome via trend to November departure, climb 5,000 feet and squawk 1,000. Golf, Charlie, Oscar, Whiskey, Sierra. Your call sign is always the last words you say, yeah, when you're transmitting. You don't begin with the call sign. So the transponder is a code, which we have to put it here, code 1000. Transponder code 1000, back, okay. Alerts, we don't have any alerts. With this code, the radar gets information about our aircraft, so more or less, not the information, but more or less the radar can see us in an easier way on the radar, because we have this transponder code set in. So now we've got our clearance to destination and we are cleared via the trend to November departure. Yeah. How do we prepare now the aircraft for this departure? Let's see what we have now. We have GPS here set. We don't want GPS. Give me a moment. Now we have the nav frequency set. Localizer 1 is for nav 1. VOR2 is for nav 2. And GPS again. It's locked now because it's the ILS frequency 110.9. That's why it says localizer. If we switch it, it's VOR. Yeah. So let's say what we need for this, for our departure. First of all, I will go to the routing, and it says climb straight ahead to 1 nautical mile, India Echo Mike Echo. It's a localizer DME 109.35. So our first information is 109.35. I have it still on standby here, yeah? So 1 nautical mile. Then turn right, 298 track, cross 12 nautical miles, TNT, Tango November Tango, at or above 3,000, max 6,000 feet. 3,000, 6,000 feet. This is the information. We have to be at 12 nautical miles from the station, train station, at an altitude of 3,000 to 6,000 feet. Not less, not above. And as we can see, trend VOR is our final point for this departure. So I will put in 109.35, which we have for the first mile on active. On standby I will have 115.7. 115. Oh. Now 115.7. This is the frequency from trend VOR, which we can't now receive, I'm pretty sure. Oh yes, we receive it. So we have also the indication here that this frequency is correct, identified by these 3 letters, and we are good. On other charts, so other departures, SIDs, you may have 3 or 4 frequencies. We just use now for East Midlands this departure here with 2 frequencies, so we can have it on nav 1 both, because after 1 mile we have to follow a 298 track to 12 nautical miles from trend VOR. This is quite a lot, so we have time there to switch it, the frequency, to have a DME on the left bottom corner here. I will put it also in. Let's see first. Our DME source is Nav1. Yes, Nav1. So DME Nav1. Primary flight display options. DME Nav1. Yeah. We can also select the bearing one. It's for Nav1. Bearing 2. It's for Nav2. But we don't need now. Oh no, the bearing 2, we can switch it actually. I am sorry, my fault. Bearing 2 can be Nav1 ILS. Nav2. Oh, ADF frequency. We don't. Oh, yes, we have here an ADF. An NDB, let's say. Which is actually not part of our SID, but a point where the MSA, the minimum sector altitude, is divided. You see, it's MSA and NDB. It's actually from here. This is the point, MSA here. But on this corner, the minimum sector altitude is 2,700 and the rest of it 2,500 feet. But we will come that in a minute. So let's continue. I will turn bearing 2 off. So ILS 1, you will see when we have departed another arrow which will point to the station we are actually on active. It will be for our trend viewer. You will see the needle be more or less on a direction, let's say, yes, it says to the right, 340, 330, maybe somewhere between this, when we are on this part here. So what is the next action? Let's read. Maximum 6,000 feet. Then turn right to intercept trend radial. So the radial from the rear are 160 inbound. Yeah. So we have to intercept the radial 160. This is the radial 160. But we have to intercept it inbound, 180 degrees. It's also here written 340. So the inbound course for the radial 160 is 340. When we cross 7 nautical miles, we have to be above 5,000 feet, but maximum 6,000. So we have another altitude restriction here. First it was 3,000 feet at 12 nautical miles, and until we reach 7 nautical miles to the station, we have to be above 5,000. And then at 4 nautical miles, so this dot here, we have to be at 6,000 feet. Not below, not above. Then to trend viewer at 6,000 feet. This is our routing for this departure. If not other specified from the ATC, let's say from the radar frequency and so on, we have to follow strictly this altitude restrictions. 3 to 6, 5 to 6, 6,000. What was our clearance? 5,000 feet. We will put 5,000 feet. Altitude select 5,000 feet. We will have on runway heading our course selector. This is the green one here, which will show us afterwards the radius, so to the station. We can turn it by this knob here. Let's put it here again. And runway heading, also our heading bug. just click on it, heading back. So 5,000 feet, heading is selected, runway heading. We put our frequencies in, 1 nautical mile, then right turn 298 until 12 nautical miles. Okay, now what's next? We have to brief our departure. And as we already know, it's my opinion, it's better for me to follow this this model of saying the briefing. I start always on the top, so I can verify with my colleague that we have both the same chart open. So let's say, all right, this is the departure briefing. Runway in use is runway 27 at East Midlands. It's the Jeppesen chart 10-3 Delta, efficient date 15 of June. It will be the Trent 2 November departure. Our MSA for the departure is 2,500 for the first part and 2,700 until we're reaching the Trent VOR. Then we will go to routing and read this. Climb straight ahead to 1 nautical mile, then a right turn. When we are reading this, we always cross-check also the chart. Right turn, 298 track at 12 nautical miles at 3,000 to 6,000 feet, not below, not above. At 12 nautical miles also intercept radial 160 inbound, so it's 340. And when reaching 7 nautical miles from Trent VOR, above 5,000 feet, below 6,000. At 4 nautical miles, at 6,000 feet, not below, not above. And then 4 nautical miles for Trent. Then we read this column here. Transition altitude is 6,000 feet, so we switch from the QNH to standard, but for today it's the same, 1013. Then we read here first, when instructed, contact Scottish Control after takeoff. So, when instructed. The other one is not relevant now for this training purpose. We can discuss it maybe on another video. But we have to report more or less our SID, what SID we fly, the TNT, the Trent 2 November, yeah, current altitude, which altitude we are passing now, because we will climb, and what is our cleared level. We will do this. And yeah, maybe required to communicate with East Midlands radar as instructed by ATC. So ATC we will stay on this frequency until ATC tell us to change frequency. And if ATC tell us to change frequency, they don't just change the frequency. They will say contact Scottish Control 134.430. They will always give you a frequency which you have to read back, because if you do any mistake on the frequency, you are more or less earless and speechless. Nobody knows if you're hearing the commands ATC gives you. Yeah, so we read back the frequency they will give us, and they verify this when your read back is correct. Yes, number 2, okay, SIDs include noise preferential routings. It's always in this chart because of the noise. And 3, expect first Data link, yes, we don't have now data link, it's another subject. And cruising levels at or below flight level 280 will be allocated en route by Scottish control. Okay, it's not relevant now for our purposes. But more or less on this box here are the most relevant informations you need to know. Now, we've done the briefing. Maybe also to mention, this SID requires a minimum climb gradient of 8.7%. We say it also in the briefing. But maybe in another video I will emphasize on this kind of stuff. So after the briefing, we ask our colleague when we are on multi-crew any questions. If there are no questions, then briefing completed. After the departure briefing, we can do also the emergency briefing. We will not doing this right now, but more or less it has to do with in case of any malfunction or engine failure on takeoff run. Before we rotate, after we rotate, what we will do. So when we are in the air, what we will do with one engine out and so on. We will brief it clearly, compact, and yeah, we will do this maybe also in another video. Emergencies. Yes, after the emergency briefing completed. We have to do the before start checklist. We now have our engines running, so we don't make the before start checklist. We are on the active runway and we will do, let's say I have it here, one checklist for this, before takeoff checklist. So before takeoff checklist, flaps are up. We don't need flaps for this takeoff. P2 heat is this one. It will heat the P2s, which gets the air to give us correct indication for the instruments. So we don't have any icings there. We will leave it now. Okay, let's P2 heat on, because it's on the checklist. Landing light on. And DI system, we don't need the DI system now, off. Store lead pay, it's always like this. Okay, we don't alerts. Okay. And before takeoff checklist completed. And yes, to mention, the rotate speed on this aircraft is 72 to 76 knots, to be sure. And now we can depart, more or less. I can leave this open to show you where we are. Okay, here, there. We're on this one. So it will be one moment, okay. So I don't use, of course, the autopilot. We will fly manually. Let's see how this aircraft reacts on my inputs. And more or less we are ready to go. Let's say we are in the holding point position of runway 27. Then we have to wait until they switch us to the tower frequency. And let's see again, what are the frequencies? Airport height, tower frequency 124.005. And what we've said COM1 on standby, the first frequency on air remains in. So ground is calling us now, and they saying Golf Charlie Oscar Victor Whiskey Sierra, change to tower frequency 124.005. Then we will respond, changing to tower frequency 124.005. Afterwards, we switch, have on active the first frequency on air. We have now the ground frequency on standby, and we will tune in the tower frequency 124.005. the purpose for this is we are on ground, we have plenty of time. So we can do this switching and so on. When you are on air, so let's say at 500 feet, just seconds before, after the takeoff, you have much workload to have the pitch, the speed, everything on normal conditions, and then the ATC calls you and says change frequency 134.430. If you don't have it here first, you don't see it anywhere and you have to write it down at the time you are struggling with the aircraft. So if you have it here, you just read this frequency, and when you read back the frequency, just hit this knob, this button, and it will drop to active, and that's it. Yeah. So try to fly with a reduced workload. SID again. Trim to November. Okay. So we are here, 1 nautical mile, right turn 298. And we are now on tower frequency. We will call them East Midlands Tower. Good evening or good day. It's Golf Charlie Oscar Whiskey Sierra, holding point runway 27, ready for departure. So we're telling the tower that we have done all our checks and we are ready for departure, because when they clear us, when they're saying to us cleared for takeoff, we have to take off. We can't stop on the runway and do all our preparations, checklists and so on. No, don't occupy the runway, it's wrong. And also we are asking for departure. Only the tower frequency will say the words cleared for takeoff. Yes, the takeoff. And this is a reason because of the famous crash on the runway in Tenerife with Pan Am and KLM. And I think everybody knows it. If not, search it on YouTube. It's a Mayday episode. It's interesting and very famous. And it was because of the phraseology. And the days back then, they said, let's say, ready for takeoff. And when there's a transmission error and you hear just takeoff, you assume you are cleared for takeoff. But, okay, that's another topic again. I will now focus with this one. So cleared for takeoff, runway 27. We read it back, cleared for takeoff, runway 27, Golf Charlie Oscar Whiskey Sierra. So we are ready, landing light is on, everything is fine, parking brake released, and now full power. Takeoff thrust set, speed is alive, instruments and limits, the instruments are on the right monitor, 60 knots, and rotate. Gently back pressure to about 8 degrees of pitch, brakes and gear up. When gear up, we will go pitch on 10. We are now 0.5 nautical miles away. We try to be on the heading of the runway. 0.9, and now we can do the heading miles 298. So on this point I've paused the video because I've done a serious mistake on the procedure, and I'm glad that it happened here so I can show you the hidden traps that an SID can hide. So as we can see on the chart, we had to turn at 1 nautical mile after the localizer DME station on a track of 298 degrees. We can see on our instrument that we are 1 nautical mile away from the station, but we are before the station. You can see this by, if you see the course selector is pointing upwards. So it's in front of us. We had to wait to pass the station and then to fly 1 nautical mile straight ahead and then to initiate the turn on the track 298. I've noticed it too late, but it's good now for the training purposes to stop here the video to explain you what happened here, what's wrong, and yeah, when mistakes happen, we can always learn from these mistakes. So let's continue now with the video. Afterwards, I will go back to the track which we had to be. And commence also the turn. 298, standard rate turn, let's say 15. And we are here. 298. Now we will switch the frequency of the VOR to trend. We can push it also to see where is the trend VOR. And we also can tune already in 340 at the course selector. 340. We are 70 nautical miles away from the VOR station, and now you can see this also here, the bearing pointer. This points always to the station you tuned in. I forgot also, okay, tower calls us, Golf, Charlie, Oscar, Whiskey, Sarah, contact Scotch radar on 134.430. We're reading back. Contact Scottish radar on 134.430. Switching the com frequencies, that's it. And we will contact now the Scottish radar. We do this like Scottish radar, good evening, Golf, Charlie, Oscar, Whiskey, Sierra at trend 2 November departure, passing 3,000 feet. Climb 5,000 feet. And then they call us back and they will tell us Golf Charlie Oscar Whiskey Sierra identified, climb altitude 6,000 feet and proceed as published. Proceed as published and climb 6,000 feet. Golf Charlie Oscar Whiskey Sierra. So we are cleared now to 6,000 feet. We tune in 6,000 feet. We can reduce in the meanwhile our load to save a bit of the engine's life. Great. Lowering a bit the nose so we can climb on 100 knots a bit. Alright, at 12 nautical miles we had to be above 3,000, below 6,000. We are now on 4,700. It's very good. And what we are doing now, we are waiting. What are the next procedures? Always think ahead. Our level off is at 6,000 feet, 1,000 feet to go. At first level off, or when passing transition altitude, we will do the after takeoff checklist. This is our next action. 1 nautical mile to go, then we will turn to intercept the radar. $500 to go. Always make callouts. And reaching altitude. When reaching altitude, we're lowering the nose when we reached it. And here, nose down. I trim now, nose down. Let's gain speed. and when we are about 130 knots, we will reduce the load. In the meanwhile, we have to turn to intercept our radial. I will intercept it in this way. It's 20, it's and deviation bar is alive. You see it, the deviation bar comes slow into the center, reducing the load to 72. That's good. We are intercepting usually in 30 or 45 degrees angle to the station. It depends when you are near the station or more far away. But let's leave it now. Here it's 24. Deviation bar is coming. But I saw now the chart. Let's do it correct wise. 2905. It's a 45 degrees intercept angle, 8 nautical miles away. Now we can turn to the radio. And standard bank. What is the standard rate of turn? Standard bank is our true airspeed, TAS, divided by 10 plus 7, and not more than 20 degrees. So 15 plus 7, above 20, we will stay on 20. Now we are on the radial, slightly to the left, so small corrections to have it centered. And as I said, at first level off, we had it before, we had to do our after takeoff checklist. Because I've talked, I forgot it, so let's do it now. After takeoff checklist, gear up, the gears up, flaps up. Alternate air is this one, off. Left and right fuel pumps. These are the fuel pumps. Off. They are in off position, fuel pumps for crossfeed purposes. So, fuel pumps off. Altimeters, QNH 1013, 6000 feet. Cross-checked, 6000 feet, 1013. It's here. 1013. And landing light off. And after takeoff checklist completed. We are now 3.8 nautical miles away. We are on 6000 feet, totally fine on the SID and the altitude restrictions. On this point, maybe also the radar will call us again before we reach trend viewer, and will say to us, climb till you find a cruise altitude or flight level 80. Then we will do this, because ADC is telling this. We don't say I can't because the chart says only to 6000 feet. The rule is follow the chart, except if ATC tells you something else. Okay. .6 nautical miles to go. We are stable. And of course try to remain on altitude. We are now a bit below, but more or less plus minus 100, it's fine. But if you trim your aircraft correctly and without any back pressure or pushing it or something this. It stays at altitude. Now we've passed the station. That's why we didn't hit any indication, and the arrow which was pointing upwards is now pointing downwards because the VOR station is behind us. Yeah, here you can see it TNT. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I didn't forget something, and of course leave your comment if you have any questions. I will try to answer as many of your comments. And yeah, give me please feedback if you like this video or not. Of course, thumbs up, like, subscribe, and everything which is usually for the YouTube community. And I will post more videos in the future with more topics. I hope you enjoyed this session, and yeah, have a good evening, night or day, and of course have a good flight. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.